All right, here we go. Okay, so the purpose of this morning session is to talk a little bit about the movement in the district toward standards-based teaching, learning, and grading, and how that is going to align with our current curriculum. Many of you are familiar with the NAFME standards that are kind of, they're improved since we got the ensemble strand in 2014, but they're still very generic and not at all string specific. So I'm going to kind of go through the process of where we landed with curriculum and how you can use it in a standards-based teaching world. So just real quick, but at least those of you who have your video on, or if we still have the little raise hand feature, how many people would consider themselves very familiar with the idea of standards-based grading? Anyone? I see no hands and one somewhat in the chat. Okay, if I missed somebody, then let me know. Maybe you can chime in, or if you feel like you do have a good idea of what it is, feel free to add or comment at any time. Like I said, this is kind of a small group and it's all string teachers. So if at any time you want to just unmute and ask a question or do the little raise hand thing, it'll ring to me so I can call on you or whatever. Feel free to be casual and interactive as much as possible, especially since it's a Google Meet recording, so it's really only going to record the person talking. It would be nice if you periodically did talk, so there would be other faces pop up on the screen for those of us watching it asynchronously later. Okay, well, so here's the deal. JCPS is going to a fully standards-based grading policy. So I want to just give you kind of some overview of what that means. First of all, just like when project-based learning was first introduced and some other initiatives, it kind of caught us off guard a little bit because we felt like we had to do a lot of extra stuff. But really, we're already teaching our students and they are learning in a standards-based way. Every skill they learn, the cycles of skills, the progressive activities that they do are all standards-based. The problem lies in that we don't really have a curriculum or a set guide in place currently to align with the new grading system. So when I talk about standards-based grading, I mean that students will have to demonstrate specific skills at different points in the unit or concert cycle or semester or year, however you're assessing them, in order to demonstrate mastery of that skill at different levels. And we are using the 1, 2, 3, 4 grading scale. So with 1 being novice and 4 being distinguished, we want students to be able to see their growth over time. Now, there is a big discrepancy between true standards-based grading and what we have to post in Infinite Campus. So our current report card system and Infinite Campus system is still set up on the 100-point grading scale. So there is some conversion that will have to take place, but in general, you want to be grading all of the skills that your students are doing on the 1, 2, 3, 4 scale, and including rubrics for those skills. In JCPS, the handbook, the SPP&G, that has all of the progression and grading policies in it, is currently being revised, and I expect that what I saw last will be adopted as the new grading policy. And that is, well, first of all, it is eliminating one of the 3 categories. The engagement category will no longer be available to put grades in. So in standards-based grading, we used to be able to put things like participation, attendance, things like that in as grades under engagement, and that is no longer the case. Those things are considered behaviors and no longer able to be reflected in a student's actual reported grade. So as the year goes on, we're going to find ways in PLCs, either small PLCs or district-wide ones like this, that we can discuss some strategies on how we can handle and encourage good participation and attendance and things like that without it actually being calculated into the student's grade. Now, as you know, rehearsal etiquette and ensemble skills are also in our curriculum. So if you can find a way for that to be kind of your participation grade, demonstrating that they can be a part of an ensemble and they can show that they are listening and across the ensemble and things like that. There are ways that you can kind of sneak some of that in. But in general, we will only be looking at progression and mastery of standards. In the new handbook, it is suggested that progression grades are worth up to 30% of the student's grade, which is kind of a small portion, about a third of their grade, and then up to 70% for mastery of standards. And it gets a little bit tricky because the student's mastery of standards cannot be directly aligned to any one assessment or playing test or concert. Those things are not demonstrating mastery of standards, so they actually have to be aligned with individual skills on the instrument or that you pre-establish in your classroom. And also another key point of standards-based grading is that in most cases, and I discussed this with a couple of people yesterday because it will probably be a school-based decision, but in most cases, all due dates need to remain flexible and students are given multiple chances to recover standards throughout the year. So before I kind of move on to the next section related to specifically the string curriculum and the changes we're looking at making, does anybody have any comments or questions about standards-based grading? Marcia Webb?
Chrissy, I have a thought. I mean, when you were saying that concerts like mastery can't be aligned with one specific thing like a concert, it can still be part of mastery. It just can't be all of the mastery. Can concerts be included as part of the mastery grade?
I don't think so, but if you have a way that you are assessing certain skills during that concert, so if the ensemble skills or a specific, technique they're using is assessed during that concert, they could demonstrate it. For me, I find that using a concert to assess skills is kind of, at the bottom of my list of things I'm thinking about on a concert day. So what you would rather want to do is maybe list all the things that you want them to be doing in the concert as, points to check their mastery for those skills ahead of time. So you're still looking at everything.
I don't know. I always felt like concerts were like a culmination of the skills we've been building all semester long. So then to take that out of mastery is like saying, oh, well, concerts really aren't that important when I know they're not the end all and the be all. I'm not saying that, but I feel like they should count for something.
The concert can definitely count in the progression toward the standards. And in the progression grade, you can mark people as zeros or 50s or however your school is doing it. Most standards-based grading schools don't give zeros. The lowest grade you put in is a 50 if they did not attend or they did not demonstrate the standards at that particular event. But as far as the mastery category goes, you could find a way to use it, but it can't be the only option. Students need to be given multiple ways to demonstrate mastery of skills. And if they miss or they miss an assignment, then they'll be able to make that up some other way.
I mean, that's what I was thinking. I wasn't saying that I wanted the concert to be the only grade or the only one of three.
Yeah.
But I feel like it should be able to be included in that category versus a progression or.
Yeah, I think you all are going to get a lot more individualized training at your schools this coming year. At DOS, we are not allowed to align any specific assignments or events to grading in the mastery category. Like none. It's all a culmination of us observing their level of mastery in the progression activities and then coming up with where they fall in the standards in the mastery category based on that. Eva, it's going to be adopted before the start of the school year. They've already had a first reading, and I expect at the next board meeting or two, it will probably be approved. But I'll keep you posted on that. And as soon as it does get approved, I'll send out a link so you can read it. And you will all have extensive training on it like I did last year. But it will be specific to your school, and there will be a lot of support in place. And just know, like, I've been through it 100% this year. We'll be following up with a session. Our band director, Sam, and I are going to do a session on specifically how to grade and where assignments go in Infinite Campus and how to track mastery on the 1, 2, 3, 4 scale and all that at a later date. It was just a little too much to get going. Our counselors are out right now. So after July 15th, when we can kind of get back in our grade book and mess around with it and set it up, we'll be able to provide you some resources for looking into that. Laura, I see your hands up. Do you still have a question? Oh, you're muted.
I don't know about anybody else, but there's a good number of my kids that would not come to a concert to perform if it wasn't part of their grade.
It can still be part of their grade. It would just go in the progression category rather than mastery.
But that's such a small percentage. It's a big concern. A big concern.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that possibly as a team, because like I said, DOS has been doing this exclusively, and it sounds like maybe Carithers had started. So what we need to do is work with PLCs and try to find a way to see if we can, you know, it might not be that you put, like, you know, fall concert as the grade, but maybe you break that concert down into 5 or 6 standards that you're assessing at that concert. So it could be something like that.
I mean, could you even call it something like demonstration of multicultural music or something like that? Because if you know, I'm thinking about how we program concerts, and we do different genres or we do different styles, and that in itself is a mastery, is a skill.
That's true. If you can align it with one of the standards on our list, and we're going to go through that, so it's going to be a little bit easier to pick things out that you would do in a concert. You just have to know that you have to give. You just can't give a 0 for a concert that's one of the 70% assignments in their grade book.
Well, if it was,
if
they weren't there, it'd still be 50 though, right?
The 50 would be the lowest. Yeah, but
right.
But that means that they didn't do it. So you still need to give them opportunities to demonstrate those skills. But if the skills being assessed in a specific concert really can only be assessed in a concert setting, then they wouldn't get a distinguished score for that. They wouldn't get 100%. So the grade would still be affected. So even if they could demonstrate the skills in a post-concert video or session with you or another way, they still might only get a 2 on that skill because they weren't there. And a 2 would equate to like a 75%. So those are the kind of details. Sorry, I'm not prepared to get into that a whole lot with standards-based grading because I want to go through the curriculum, and I kind of feel like we'll start making connections on how to make it work and how to share with each other. But the grades are affected pretty appropriately. I know it seems like it won't at first, but I've been doing it all year, and I have, students who used to get all A's and things like that. And I know we are in NTI, so it's different, but students who were participating did get different levels of grades. So it wasn't all just, A's for everybody. There were a lot of 50s and in between. So we will be talking about that much more later, and we're going to go into breakout rooms in a little bit so we can discuss it in kind of smaller groups and share ideas there. So that might help as well with wrapping our minds around it. Let's see, Kaya, I think I saw your digital hand.
Yeah, but it looked like you were about to move on. I guess my question was, like, I thought that, like, if there's a difference between a student attempting the standard, attempting to meet the standard, and would get that minimum point value or whatever. And then there's a difference with a student who doesn't attempt to meet the standard at all. Like, for example, if you have a concert and you're able to tie in your standards and you're able to assign grades appropriately and whatever, and then a student doesn't come to the concert, wouldn't that equate to not attempting the standard at all? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yes, at that time. But like I said, we need to find multiple ways for students to address, to achieve mastery and standards. But as far as grading goes, again, that's going to come back to your school. So at DOS, if a student doesn't turn anything in and it's like basically nothing, we eventually have to put a 50% in. A lot of schools might want you to mark that another way. They might want you to mark it as an incomplete, or just leave it blank for a certain amount of time. Depending on your school, they're going to go through that with you and kind of tell you how to address that. So you want the students' grades to be as current as possible. So if they're checking parent portal or whatever, that they can kind of see a good representation of how the child is doing in your class over time. So it's not like all of a sudden you put all the grades in and it goes way high or way low or whatever. So that's why we put the 50s in, so they can clearly see this grade is bringing it down. But in addition to putting the 50 in, I also mark it incomplete. So it is very clear the student didn't do half the work. It is incomplete. They did nothing or very little toward meeting that standard. Okay, well, yeah, I'm going to move on a little bit because speaking of trying to do standards-based grading during NTI, during a global pandemic, which has been a nightmare and a half, I quickly discovered that our current music curriculum does not really support that type of work. So starting way back in August, as soon as DOS started doing this, our music department worked really hard and fast to try to identify how we can grade our students appropriately when we are only given 11 national standards. So I want to show you all a couple of things just so you have them in your mind. And if you forget about them or you need access to them later, just let me know and I will share them with you. But I want to just bring to your attention a couple of curriculums that are out there and how we use them in JCPS. So, and let me know if I forget to change screens or whatever, and I'm talking about something you can't see. So our National Association for Music Education, NAFME, revised the music standards in 2014, and they did a pretty good job. Previously, those of you who have been around a long time, I think we had like 9 standards for all music, and they were very generic. So we at least moved into this strand idea. Now, there are 5 different national music standard strands. So what we want to be looking at for orchestra is the one that says ensemble. Guitar, keyboard, and harmonizing instruments is clearly labeled here, but in some other documents it just says harmonizing instruments. So just know that that's piano and guitar and instruments that self-harmonize. We want to be looking at the ensemble strand. In this ensemble strand, there are 11 anchor standards. I believe there are 3 in the category of creating, 3 in the category of performing, 3 in the category of responding, and then 2 that connect creating, performing, and responding together. So we have these 11 anchor standards, and they are divided into 5 proficiency levels. So in the NAFME standards, we are looking at 5 levels. Novice, which you can see in the code here, ends with 5A. So NAFME is thinking that in general, the novice category is things that students should be able to do in a music ensemble class by the end of 5th grade. The intermediate category ends with a number 8. So in general, that would be middle school skills, things that students should be able to do by the end of 8th grade. And then we have 3 levels of high school. So NAFME has established that in most high school settings, you would be looking at mastering skills in the proficient level by the end of your high school career if the students complete, a sequence of, regular 3 or 4 years in a high school program. Now, those of you who have advanced chamber ensembles or teach at performing arts schools or have other advanced ensembles in your class, you may need to be looking in the accomplished or advanced categories, which are high school level 2 and 3 skills on the right. Now, these are the standards that NAFME adopted from the National Core Art Standards for dividing them into these artistic processes of creating, performing, and responding. So we're very lucky that our National Music Organization made that available to us. Now, in the state of Kentucky, we have this document, which is called the Kentucky Academic Standards. If you do a Google search of Kentucky Academic Standards for Visual and Performing Arts, or if you type in music, it will pop up. This document was established after the National Core Arts and National Music Standards were revised. So they are aligned somewhat. There's a good little introduction there, legal base, graduation requirement information, and then it goes into elementary visual and performing arts, so visual art, general music, things like that. It's not really going to let me scroll through easily, so just kind of show you. Let me get down to something that's not first grade. No. Anyway. Possibly music. Oh, we have media arts in there as well. Oh, here's something that's music. Okay. So here we have some 6th, 7th, and 8th grade skills. In our Kentucky state standards, the national standards, like this is Anchor Standard number 2, which is in the creating process. The Kentucky standards do break it down by grade level. But if you look at the language here, it's still very generic, not at all string specific, and kind of leaves a lot of wiggle room for interpretation. So in some ways, that's really nice. In other ways, it kind of leaves us hanging for, okay, well, what do we really grade here? This is difficult. So here's what we did. We took the 11 anchor standards, of which I mentioned there are 3 in the area of performing, and we decided that 3 performance standards is not enough to justify such a significant portion of a student's grade in a performance-based class. So what we did was we took our learning targets that are our, orchestra and string-specific skills, and we kind of stretched them out in that performance standard and created a lot of other standards that we can grade. So when you're talking about mastery of skills being 70% of a student's grade, you kind of want, out of that section, you really want like 90% of that to be based on students' performance skills and demonstration of those skills in your class. And then the other 10%, 20% in self-reflection, creating and improvising, and other, and connecting those skills together. Okay, so that brings us to where we are today, which is a string orchestra curriculum draft, which I've been working on with several people. I think, I'm not looking at it now, but I know at least 2 of them are in here, so let me copy this link. I'm going to put this link in the chat so everybody will have it, and just let me know if you have issues with accessing it. I think I opened the sharing settings properly. Oh, that's not even the right thing, is it? Yes, it is. Okay. All right, so if you want to open it in another tab so you can see it more easily, that would be fine. Let me open this up. Okay, I think we're all looking at this now. Okay, so just again, let me know if what I'm talking about is not what you see. All right. Now, I sent out an email earlier in the summer, I think last week, to find out who had this book. Okay. This is a very important book because the stuff that is on this new curriculum is very simple because we wanted to make a very concise and, as Paul said earlier, visually appealing curriculum document that we can post in the teacher backpack, that you can easily print and have on hand, that your administrators can see. But this book is going to have all of the details of how to use those things in every level. So if you don't have this book, you can either type in the chat and I'll look at the record later, or you can respond to my email and let me know that you don't have it, and I will deliver one to you, or I will get it to your school as soon as possible. I have them in my car. So we have them for new teachers, and we have them for people who don't have them anymore, that maybe got one and can't find it. We haven't used it in a while, so we're going to start using it soon. So in this book, there are pages and pages and pages of string-specific standards, and also general information including prior knowledge that is required, sequence of activities for teaching those standards, and indicators of success, which we would use as our assessment tools. In addition to that, there is an ebook available that is that I have links for every single teacher available for. So if you don't have your ebook link from about 3 years ago, let me know. I'll be sending an email about this, so you don't have to remember it now, but respond to it and let me know that you don't have it, and I will send you an ebook link, and we'll be talking about that later. But there is a companion to this book that's only available as a digital book that is an assessment guide that is full of lesson activities, rubrics, sample worksheets, alignment with curriculum, alignment with specific assessments, how to combine standards into projects and other things like that. So we want to make sure you have access to both of those books. This one is the hard copy book, and the assessment guide that is a companion to this curriculum. Now, let me find where I'm sharing. There it is. Okay, so in this curriculum, over on the left, just very briefly, I addressed the national music standards so you could see which one these skills align with. But we are mostly, because we have this, you know, the American String Teachers Association spent a lot of time and effort and money developing this amazing resource, we're going to use it as our main tool for curriculum work. So what we want to do is kind of go over how the proficiency levels are arranged here. And then we're going to kind of go into some breakout rooms in a minute and discuss more kind of Q&A and how we can use this. So see here that in the ASTA book, there are only 4 levels of proficiency. So the baseline skills will be aligned with what NAFME refers to as novice. So in general, that would be like our 5th and 6th grade beginner level skills. Developing is what ASTA calls the 2nd level, and it aligns with the NAFME intermediate, which would be our middle school through 8th grade. And then proficient is also proficient in the NAFME standards. So this one would be where we want to be by the end of high school. And then ASTA only has 4 levels of proficiency, so they combine the skills from the NAFME accomplished and advanced, the level 2 and 3 high school skills, into one. Now, the reason that this jumps around a little bit and it's not directly aligned in sequential order is because this book was written in 2011 when leaders in string education were really trying to be proactive with this kind of work. And then the core arts standards and the national music standards came out and arranged things a slightly different way. So they went back, our amazing string teachers, leaders went back and aligned everything with the national standards for us. So this is basically a kind of a cut and paste job that a curriculum committee with myself, Marcia Webb, Alex Howard, Derek Turner, Dave Nelson and Helen Haverstick worked on to just kind of get organized and discuss some of these things. It is still in draft form, so we're open to comments and feedback. And if there's anybody in here who feels very passionate about this kind of work that would like to join the committee or join in on some of the conversations, we welcome that in the future. So just kind of let me know moving forward. I would like to have something that's a little bit more than a draft form ready by the start of school so you can use it. So as I said, what we really focused on was, these are a lot of like improvisation and oral training skills. What we really focused on was down here in the performing category. I'm going to skip standard 4 here for a moment and jump down to standard 5. So if you look in standard 5, which is where we do the bulk of our teaching and performing, we have a lot of different things to look at. So first of all, we have content area 1A. That is what ASTA calls body format. And then there are these, 4 levels or however many levels. The first number aligns with the proficiency level. So 1.1 is a baseline skill. In the second column, 2.1, that would be in the, developing or intermediate skills. And then the proficient skills start with 3 and the advanced accomplished skills start with the number 4. So if you are looking at a specific content area and you check the first number, that will tell you if you're looking at a level 1, 2, 3, or 4 skill. We do have specific performance-based skills in the areas of body format, left-hand skills and knowledge, right-hand skills and knowledge, tonal oral skills and ear training, rhythmic oral skills and ear training, and music literacy, as well as expressive elements and evaluation of music and music performance. So you can see there's a big chunk of what we do in there. But if you look closely, you'll see things that are still kind of generic that you're going to have to figure out how you're going to teach it and how you're going to assess it. Let me see here if I can find one that's got a lot of parts. Okay, so if you're looking at content area 2B, skill 2.1, students will perform rhythm patterns containing subdivisions. Well, as a teacher, that is helpful and also kind of wide topic. So if you have a specific piece that contains subdivisions, you can use that piece or that exercise or scale or warm up or whatever to assess mastery in this category. So we wanted to give you some guidance where you could find specific standards and skills, but also provide enough flexibility to where you can still use a piece of music in the way that you want to address different things. So before we go into breakout rooms, let me just say a couple more things. One is that even though I did mention some kind of different levels aligning with grades, grade levels like 5th grade, 6th grade for baseline, that is not a hard, fast rule, especially coming out of NTI. We may have 8th graders and even 9th graders that need to do these baseline skills. So these are not repeated in each category. If you just dive right into proficient level, you need to make sure that your students have the skills in the baseline and developing first, because like I said, they're not repeated in each level. They're sequential. So go through that. And it could be that a student is very high achieving in music literacy, but below grade level on left and right hand skills. So an individual student or group of students could be all over the place on this map. And the great thing about us is that we are not held accountable for specific grade line or grade level assessments. So we can assess the students and move them forward from whatever point they are at. And that includes all across grade levels. So if you have beginners in high school or advanced students in the 5th grade, you can just find where they're at and move forward from there. So I think instead of taking questions for the group, I think I'm going to move us into some breakout rooms and just kind of discuss a little further. I did create a note catcher. If you're not familiar with that term, it's basically a Google Doc that allows for groups to take notes that we can share later. I just have to find it. There it is. Okay, I'm going to post the note catcher in the chat, and Alex and Marcia are going to kind of lead two of the groups, and then I'll lead a third one. And there are some questions on there to discuss. And I think if we can spend about 20 minutes in breakout rooms, about 10 minutes on each question, if that's possible. If you get hung up on one question or the other, that's okay. And then in about 20 minutes, so about 10:32, come back and we'll share out with the group whatever you found and whatever you discussed. And leaders in the groups, if they ask questions and you don't know the answers to them, just please take notes on that so I can either answer them when we come back, or we can get those answers for you.